You're listening to the One Step Deeper podcast with your host, Jimmy Moore and Brittany Davis. OneStepDeeperPodcast.com.
Today's just been a whole ass glitch, okay? Like, today's just been a glitch day, so it's in tune with what's happening.
You have definitely had a day, at least from what you've described. I haven't talked to you today. This is the first time we're talking today, and so I was like, all right, something's going on. But maybe she needs some closure in her day today, and you get to be the one in control of that.
Absolutely. I do get to be in control of how I feel about the situation, and I get to be in control how I react, and I get to be in control if I choose closure on all these little things that keep happening today.
Just give us one that you've had to deal with today. I'm just curious.
I woke up with a 4-year-old in the bed with me, all snuggled and kicking me all night long. And I'll be honest with you, it's been quite 2 days because the night before last, we were woken up, me and my husband, in the middle of the night with some intruders in our vehicles.
Yeah.
So a little hard to get to sleep anyway the next night. And then Alma Grace was in there, and I woke up, I was exhausted, I was tired, and I do not want to go on my walk. I do not want to run. But you know what? I got to do it anyway. And so I did. I got it done. But I had to make that choice of what I was going to do in response to that stimulus that had come my way.
Yes.
Ugh.
So guys, here today in episode 37, that is what we're talking about. What do you do when you want to have closure, but it's not happening the way you want it to happen? And like how you can choose which way it goes. I think sometimes we have this whole concept of, I need closure so I can move on. And we're going to talk very heavily about this today because we both have stories in our lives where things didn't really get resolved, but you had to move on in life. And so we're going to get into that here in just a moment. But you're watching and listening to the One Step Deeper podcast. Go to OneStepDeeperPodcast.com. It's the official website for this show. You can see all the past episodes as well as listen to the episodes there. We also debut this on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube. So go check it out over on YouTube. Type in a keyword search, One Step Deeper. You'll find the show. We also put it up on IGTV as well as Facebook. One Step Deeper on both of those pages as well. It is a podcast on Mondays, so go listen to it wherever you traditionally listen to podcasts, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, or Alexa. And check us out on Mondays. And then leave us a review. We had one review that called us the Goated podcast. And I remember sending you that one, and I said, Goated? She's like, greatest of all time. I'm like, no, I've heard of the GOAT, but I had never heard of Goated. So OSD is now GOAT, and the E to the D to the, I'm like, no. But thank you to the person that sent that. And we had a lovely comment from somebody on YouTube last week that really touched you.
Yes. Yeah. I was when you sent it through, I was like, wow, that was incredible. It was a really good comment.
Yeah, so YouTube, you've been coming through with some really nice comments, so thank you. We really appreciate that. Turn those into reviews over on Apple Podcasts. That really will help us out. We don't have a whole lot of reviews on Apple Podcasts, but constantly getting comments on YouTube, on the Instagram page when we post it there. So really appreciate everyone engaging in the show. But here in episode 37 today, we are going to talk about this concept of closure. You know, and a lot of people, they do get stuck here, Brittany. You know, we had an episode many moons ago, How to Get Unstuck. One of the things that sticks some people is they feel like they need this magical closure. And when they say closure, they're talking about some idealistic scenario of an ending. And I think sometimes we pigeonhole ourselves into thinking, well, I can't move on until I can fix that relationship. Let's take my dad, for example.
Yeah, go ahead.
Closure with him?
No.
In the traditional way? No. In the traditional way, we're still broken. We're still not talking. It's a broken relationship that he will probably go to his grave, and I'll never talk to him again. But to today's topic, I do have closure because I've chosen that I need to cut him out for my mental health sake, for my sanity sake, for all the reasons that I need to do it. And he's chosen at the same time, I've never talked about this, but he's choosing not to have me in his life. He hasn't even tried to reach out. And so do we have closure in that situation? Yes and no. Yes, in as much as we've chosen. No, in as much as maybe the expectation is maybe we would still come to terms before he dies.
Well, I think that's important, like, to differentiate here that there's this idealistic version of what closure looks like. But that's what we're going to tear apart today, is what closure is. Because in my opinion, disinterest in me is all the closure that I need.
Yes.
I have not always believed that. But if someone is disinterested in being around me, exactly who I am, as I am right now, that is closure for me, that they're not meant to be in my life. And I know that's really, really tough. We are taught from childhood, to please everybody and reach out, and what if somebody doesn't like us? It doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter if somebody doesn't like me. I don't care anymore. And that's really all the closure that I need. And even relationships that I've had to dive into that knew me as this Brittany, and then see me as this new person, and they're like, I don't really feel, and that's all the closure that I need, that they're not vibing with who I am now. That's okay. And recently I lost a really long-term friendship, and I didn't feel like I got that sense of closure until I sat down and I was like, you know what, this is my choice. I get to choose how I feel about this situation, and I have plenty of stories like that throughout my life. And sometimes it took me a couple of months, sometimes it took me a couple of years to just get to that point where I'm like, oh, right, I get this choice. I get to choose this closure.
Yeah. Now, our brains do that to us, though. They make us think that closure is defined as a singular thing, back to that idealistic again. And it's amazing how we want it to fit in that box. Like, that's almost a default that we just go to, that, well, closure is, and then fill in the blank of whatever that idealistic is. But then what we're trying to open your minds up here today to, you guys, is, no, closure is what you want it to be. I mean, some things are just going to be abrupt. Sometimes relationships will end. Sometimes jobs will end. Sometimes uncertainties will continue on. Like right now, we would all love some closure on this hellhole shit show that's going on in the world right now. We're not going to get it. So what you have to do in the meantime is create your own closure. And I've been writing about this publicly of, hey, just stay true to who you are and live your life the best you can while the world's in chaos around you, and it's easy to get caught up in needing it to be ended on a certain term. But all you're doing at that point is just stressing yourself out, giving yourself more anxiety unnecessarily so. And at the end of the day, the point of creating some kind of closure is to calm you, because an uncalm body is one that's not living rationally, is not making good decisions, and you're jumping into things trying to desperately get to this closure.
Absolutely. Like, okay, so here's the truth bomb, okay? We think that closure comes from somebody else. And,
Right.
you and I've already said, closure is your choice. But just saying another way, no one else can give you closure. Let's just say in an ideal world, you have this conversation. You get the why of why this happened. Do you think it will make you feel any better? No. Having a conversation with someone who's chosen to walk out of your life or not be a part of your life, or someone who hurt you, I don't have that typical closure from my abuser, but I have closure. I don't even want to talk to him. I have no desire to see him or talk to him or be face to face. I really could give a care less of any closure that he needed to talk to me. No, the answer is no. But I have, and he can't give me, he didn't give me that. I made that for myself.
You know what your closure is he's no longer anything in your life other than a memory, and you've moved on and become successful in spite of what he did. That's
absolutely. And like, I'm reading David Goggins' book right now, and I'm not done with it, but gosh, it just fires me up so much. I mean,
Say the title for people that want to read it.
Can't Hurt Me by David. Yeah, it just, oh my gosh. And so I'm getting to that turning point in his story where he starts taking all of these things that have happened to him, and listen, I'm only like this much into his story, and I'm like just gut wrenching at the stuff that this man has been through. And he gets to this turning point where he decides to use all of that as fuel. And so that's the thing. My closure is taking what happened to me and turning it into fuel to drive my passions and to drive me to who I am today. The hell if I'm going to let what happened to me and how this person hurt me, this person hurt me, this person hurt me. I'm not going to sit here and like pine and wait for closure anymore. Nope, this is done. This was a chapter in my life. We're done here. We're moving on. Now I'm going to let this pain and this hurt, because it does hurt, okay? All of these things that happen, they hurt so much. But we use that pain and that hurt and we fuel ourselves. Unstoppable. We become unstoppable when we choose to close off those things, have the closure that, not necessarily that we want, but we have the closure that we need in order to move on.
Well, and a lot of it takes processing. And I think our brains, again, when we process, we want to process the ideal. And so the ideal isn't always the answer. I know we want the ideal to happen. Well, if this person does this and then this falls into place and everything comes together and we're all singing Kumbaya, my Lord, at the end. And it's like, that's not reality 99% of the time. Like, that could happen, I suppose. But if you're waiting on that perfect scenario, the stars to line up in order for you to find closure, you're going to be highly disappointed in your life.
And you are robbing yourself. You are so robbing yourself. And I think this leads into a story that I didn't want to tell, but it is so relevant to this, I have to tell it. So early on in me and Wild Man dating, very early on, I was in love, crazy in love, so obsessed, Wild Man, everything, okay? It was all about Wild Man. Well, I had broken up with my first really serious boyfriend 9 months before Chris and I got together. You would think that I would be over it, right? Well, I was still searching for closure that I never got. And I met Chris and I was like, oh my God, I'm so in love. I love him so much. And I forgot about all of those feelings. Well, this person that had hurt me so badly had moved away and they were coming back home. And I was dating Chris and very serious with him. And I wanted closure so bad that I told Chris, I need a week. I need a week to make sure that I'm done with this. And I didn't know if I was going to see this person. I had no idea. But wanting and desiring closure almost cost me Wild Man. And like, everybody knows how much I love Wild Man. You've seen the show. You see me fawn over him and all the things, and probably the episode that him and I did together. You guys know how much I love Wild Man. I would have missed out on so much of my life because I was seeking closure from a person that couldn't give it to me, because it wasn't up to him to give me the closure that I needed. It was up to me, and I had to look into the situation and see that I am valuable, and the way that he was treating me was not okay. And that in itself, I go back to what I said early on, disinterest is closure. His disinterest in me was all the closure that I needed, but I had to see that for myself. And by the way, I never got that conversation. I never seen him in that week that I took away from Wild Man to really sort all of my feelings out. I never saw him. And it wasn't until I was like way into my engagement and almost married that he ever reached out to me and apologized for what happened. I didn't expect that. It was a random thing. That was a privilege even that I got that conversation with him, but I didn't seek it out, and I had already moved on with my life by the time I got that conversation with him. So all of that story was to say it was still on me to come to that place of closure with that hurt that I went through.
So is this need for closure kind of this unspoken need for an expectation to be met? Is that because we talk about a lot of these around the edges of all these things every time we talk on this show, but it feels like it's an expectation to have closure with an unresolved kind of issue like you did with the ex-boyfriend. And is that just an itch that just needs to be scratched? Is that like human nature? Like, what draws us to want that? And you have this deep desire within you to have this closure with this ex-boyfriend, to the point that you said, wow, man, we gonna take a hold for a week. And he's like, what the, because you've talked about how that really messed him up, trying to go on, okay, do I really want this girl? Does she really want me? So then he had to have, is this closure? What are we doing here? Like, he was having all those things in your desperate desire to scratch that itch of the expectation of closure with this other guy.
I don't think other people realize, at least the people in my life don't realize, that we need a why. And so I have always consciously searched for a why, why people believe what they believe, why people act the way they act. Even if you watch my stories after the people broke into my vehicle, I wasn't like, oh, you pieces of crap. I was like, I wonder what they're going through that made them want to do that. That's where my mind goes, because I want to know the why. And even if it makes us angry, or it's hurt, or it hurts us, we always want to know the why. And we think it's us. That's another thing with closure, that we look at these people who are hurting us and we want to know why they hurt us, because we want to know the pattern so that we do not repeat that again. But a lot of the times, that closure we're looking for, it's about them.
Yes.
And it was never about them.
Yeah. Like, that's the thing. Like, when we seek out closure, it's almost a selfish thing if you stop and think about it, because you're so vain, you probably think this closure is about you, and it may not be. Sorry, I have to always sing, but like you're so right. Like, sometimes these things come up where people just got issues in their life, and they up and leave your life for whatever reason, and you're like, well, what did I do wrong? I need to have closure because I need to make sure I don't do this to someone else. That MFer did it to you, and you just have to, like, be okay with that. And sometimes here's the hard part. You don't always know those details, or you don't learn the details till many years later. I think about 2 years ago, it's been right at this time 2 years ago, that I found out the information about my childhood trauma that blew my mind. And it had been quarter century of my life that I believed one thing, and then just everything just got shaken up, and I went, I had already created closure there, and now you just ripped that scab off, and I'm going, what? And it flabbergasted me. Just those of you that don't know, if you hadn't been watching all of our episodes, 2 years ago, my stepfather died, and I got shipped away to live with my dad, my abusive dad, when I was 14. And I always thought it was the stepdad that sent me away. And it was actually my mom that sent me away. And she explained the story of she's worried he was going to kill me. But then my mom didn't know I was getting beat. And so just a lot of stuff came up. I've worked through a lot of that. Brittany's been with me through the whole experience. But that's something where I created closure. And then that closure got ripped to shreds by the truth. And so sometimes you have to kind of create stories to close, even if later you learn new information, which then makes you close it again. It took a while to close it again, because once that was wide open again, I'm like, how did my mom not know I was being beat? How could she have sent me away? I had all these narratives in my head that I had created that helped me. I didn't like it, but I created the closure there. But then all these things opened back new doors, and I had to close them again.
Yeah, I know you and I have talked about this movie before, and you might not get this reference. Maybe some people were watching would get this reference. So one of my favorite books and movies of all time is called Dr. Sleep. It's a follow-up of Stephen King's probably most famous, probably one of his most famous movies ever, book into movies. I don't know, the It series was pretty up there too. The Shining. And so Dr. Sleep was a follow-up to The Shining, and it's a story about
Johnny.
Yeah. It's a story. It's the kid in The Shining grown up, and he's got all of these images in his head, and the person literally teaches him, put a box on them, close them up, keep them locked away, and don't don't let them out. And at one point in the movie, he has to let them all out. And so that's the thing. You never know what it is that's going to open that box. You may have a time in your life where you're like, oh crap, everything is open. I got to close it up again. And I mean, I've talked about my example 3 years ago when all of the boxes were completely open. And I was like, okay, I am wide. My eyes are wide open to all of the things right now. I need to shut some of these and deal with them one at a time.
So you guys know I've been doing 75 hard, right? One of the requirements for this is drink a gallon of water per day. I still find myself needing a little extra boost and a little bit more electrolytes to fuel all of these workouts I've been doing. And that's why I'm super excited to be partnered with Element right now on the One Step Deeper podcast, because I am needing all the electrolytes and they are providing life for me right now. They sent me this amazing package, guys. Look. What? We got watermelon, we got orange, we got raspberry, and my personal favorite is citrus, because listen, it reminds me of margarita, and during 75 hard, you can't have those, so I'm telling you, this stuff is giving me life. So if you're interested in trying them for yourself and getting some great electrolytes, you can go to drinklmnt.com/Jimmy, and there you can get a free sample. All you have to do is pay the shipping. Hope you enjoy. Remember, just as Element says, stay salty.
It's 3.5 years ago now.
Yeah. I keep saying 3 years, and so that's but yeah, 3.5 years that I opened everything, and I and honestly, it opened my eyes. Right now, live, you're watching me make a revelation. I've sought closure in areas that I need to accept that I'm not going to get them in the way that I want them, and that I need to walk through closure on my own in these different areas. And I have in a lot of them. I've learned to accept some of these really tough things that happened to me, and I've accepted and made that closure happen in my life. But there are some other areas in my life that I'm still wanting that why and wanting that reason of why did this happen. And sometimes you don't get that answer. And the sad part is, selfish, maybe not the right word, but on some level, we think we are owed something. Yes. We think that we are owed an apology, or we are owed an explanation. And it's not that we aren't. If someone hurts us, it's not that we shouldn't get those things, but the fact of the matter is, most times you're not going to get those.
Damn it, I'm owed an apology for getting beat. I understand it now, because the context that helps me have closure with Dad is he got beat by an alcoholic dad himself. So I understand, but it's like, can you just humble yourself for a moment and say, look, I did you wrong. I'm sorry I put you through that and gave you decades of anguish trying to get over that. I'm sincerely sorry, and I want to be in your life for the last few years of my life before I'm gone. Like, that would be the ultimate closure with that particular example. But I'm not going to get that, and I realize that. So the thing that helps me is, look, he had a hard life, and like you with the kids that broke into your cars, your immediate thing was, I wonder what's going on with them. So what I've had to do the same with my dad, I know he's hurting from all of his abuse, and that he never got to process that. And yes, he could have processed that, but he's chosen not to. I've chosen to process mine. I've chosen to use mine to speak out on this show and to stand up for other people and say, hey, look, if you've been abused, it's okay to talk about it and get it out there in the open and find your own closure. Because look, at the end of the day, closure is about nobody but you. Because if you're not good with what's happened, with events that's happened in your life, you're going to be in constant turmoil. And I know people in their lives right now, and you do too, that they're in constant turmoil. It's because they haven't sought out that closure for themselves about the things that have happened in their life.
I think something, and one of the reasons that certain people do not have closure is breadcrumbing. So let's say we're specifically talking about a relationship here. You have someone who has left your life, but then they'll randomly call you or text you, and they leave you a little breadcrumb. And you're like, oh, I can't move on because they're going to call me. I did this for 9 months. This is why I was breadcrumbed and led on. That's another word. I was led on for 9 months. If I'd get a little text, little call, little, hey, how you doing? And I'd be like, oh my God, he loves me again. You know, and I did that for 9 months, and I stayed in turmoil over that. And I think of even relationships with family members or friends even that we don't talk for a really long time because this happened or this happened. And then I just get a little taste or an invite. And then I'm like, okay, are we good? Are we good? And then a lot of the times it's kind of like a slap in the face of no. And so that's breadcrumbing. And a lot of people hold on because they're starving for this person's attention.
Yes.
They're starving, or they have connected themselves with this person so hard that they're starving for. They will take I'm bringing it back. They will take the plate of shit with whipped cream on top because, oh, it's attention. They gave me something. Oh my gosh. Even if it's tiny little breadcrumbs, they accept that, but they don't realize they are spending emotional time on these people. They're spending all of their emotional time stuck there and they don't have closure. And I feel bad for them. I've been there. But this is where, like we point out a lot, self-awareness really comes into play.
I tried for years with the breadcrumbs with my dad. Like literally, I went out of my way to pretend like what happened when I was a teenager didn't happen because it was never talked about. I went out of my way to talk about I love you and I'm going to be there. I went out of my way to treat him kindly, even though in my heart of hearts, it was just a sacrifice to do that. I went out of my way and showed this man grace that he didn't deserve. And at the end of the day, I start talking about childhood trauma and he loses his shit to my mom. And that's how he reacts to all the things. But it's like at that point, the breadcrumbs, okay, there's no more breadcrumbs. It's like you have chosen to make that bread stale because I'm not eating it anymore. It's not worth it anymore. You know, and to this day, I love it if he came back in my life, but I'm not going to put up with breadcrumbs. You're going to have to give me a whole loaf. It's a bad thing for a keto guy to say out loud, but you have to give me a whole loaf of bread that's freshly made, handmade, best quality ingredients and say, here you go. Here's the closure you wanted.
Oh, I am smiling as I'm writing this down because people just might as well just crown me the boundaries queen at this point because what you said was so important. All right. So when it comes to closure, you're seeking this closure. I feel like if you took a step back and you were the boundary king or the boundary queen and you did not accept the breadcrumbs from people that people give you your whole life, these little tiny little snippets of things that makes you hold on, set the freaking boundaries. You give me what I am worth, or this is closure. I go back to that. Disinterest is closure. So these tiny little things, this little tiny little bit of love, this little tiny little bit of calls, no, that is still disinterest. That is just keeping you and dragging you along, just watching you follow along behind them like a little mouse just eating the little breadcrumbs. Absolutely not. Set a boundary and say, I will not let you treat me this way. And I have a relationship in my life where I grappled for a really long time of making this decision. But I knew what I wanted, and I set a very strict and strong boundary with this person. And I said, if you can't meet me here, then we do not have a relationship. And that was my closure of whatever the answer was. If you're willing to meet me here, cool, we're going to have a really great relationship. And I offered them the choice to give me boundaries too. I honored their boundaries. And if they couldn't meet me there, then that was the closure that I needed. Boundaries are a big secret in closure.
With that particular example, can I tell you one thing you did that people need to take home is if you're looking for closure, you got to take a chance that you might lose a relationship, a job, a whatever the circumstance is. I'm trying to make it broad for people, but it happens a lot in relationships, and yours happens to be a relationship. But you took that chance, Brittany, This person could have said, yeah, go F yourself, and that would have been your answer, and this person would be out of your life. But they actually surprised you, still surprising you to this day by saying, okay, I see your boundary. And I think they have a newfound respect for you that was not there before. So the boundary that you created actually turned into the closure you've been wanting. And it's not just closure, it's continuation. It's closure of the rift that you had with this person, but it's continuation of this relationship that you always wanted. So in a sense, the closure became the matriculation of exactly what you've been looking for your whole life.
Boundaries turned into the closure of the pain and a continuation of the new, like setting that boundary. And I think that's why I didn't even realize you were going here. But yeah, if you think about it, someone's hurt you, but you want them in your life and they want to be in your life. That's also the trick. Both of you want to be in each other's lives, but there's too much hurt and pain and you don't know how to do that. Have a real freaking face-to-face adult. I can't even say adult. Mature is the word I'm looking for. Some adults out there, just okay. But have a mature conversation with the other person and say, this is how you hurt me. Give them the opportunity to say, this is how you hurt me. Okay. Apologize. See if there's ways that you can meet in the middle. Set the very strong boundaries of, this is what I want from this relationship. Why are people afraid to do this? Like, this is what I want from this relationship. I do not understand why this is a thing.
Pride. I can tell you right now, with my dad, it's totally pride. He will not allow himself to be wrong about anything. He's narcissistic, like we've talked about. And, when you have that kind of intense pride, which again is a coping mechanism from his trauma, like I know what it is. And this is what makes closure so hard. You can see all the pieces to the puzzle. You know why he's the way he is. You know why he's reticent to want to have these adult conversations, these mature conversations like you're saying. And so knowing that ahead of time, you don't even want to broach it with them. And then if you do try to broach it with them, then you're mocked and then it just makes it worse. And so closure just doesn't seem, at least in the traditional sense, like it will ever happen. And that's where I'm at with my dad, that I know I'm not going to get it. And I would love, just on a whim, to try to call him, to maybe go see him in person and try one more time. Because I never wanted to give up on the relationship. I feel like the indifference, like you said, was my answer, and that I wasn't going to get it. And it's been hard. It's not been hard to let it go, because I have created that closure in my mind about that relationship. But I hate it for him, because he's not going to get to talk to his oldest son for the rest of his life. And he's done this before. This is the thing. My older brother, Kevin, who died 13 years ago, him and my dad didn't talk for 10 years. So this is a pattern that my dad does, where he'll go quiet on family because he's stubborn, because he's hurt. His trauma doesn't allow him to swallow his pride and try to do the right thing and create closure where closure needs to happen. Now, thankfully, it happened with Kevin, because 1 year after they finally reconciled, I helped bring them back together. 1 year after, Kevin had his heart attacks, and 8 years later, he was dead. So closure means something, because look, once somebody's dead, the only closure you can do is with yourself.
Yeah, I think about two stories that come to mind. So mine is, I was extremely close with my grandmother in my younger years. And after my grandfather passed, my grandmother obviously changed. And she wasn't the same person, because she was hurting and going through her own thing. And I didn't understand then what I know now about grief and about pain and about hurt. And so we drifted apart. And I got really, really hurt by some actions that took place. And my grandmother no longer here anymore. She's no longer here, and I don't get to have that conversation with her. I don't get to have that closure with her, and that's really hard. And I think that was one of the reasons why I didn't really have a whole lot unsaid when it came to Mr. Chris. The past couple of months when I lost Mr. Chris, I didn't leave anything unsaid with him. But because of what happened with my grandmother, I make sure that I say what I need to, except for that one little relationship thing that happened recently. But finally, that resolved itself months later. It resolved itself. And then I also think about Wild Man, and I'm very careful in how I tell his stories because they're his stories to tell. So I won't go into the big details, but the small details are his dad, his biological father, chose to not be in his life, chose alcohol over him. And because of that, Wildman had to get closure in his mind. And it took him many, many, many years to find any level of not anger, not being upset, but just having closure of this is what's happened and I have to accept this and move on with my life. And he finally got to that point, and his biological father had ran into him when he was 23. And Chris did what we talked about earlier, and it's such a sad story. It's hard to tell. I was with Chris when it happened. He was like 24, 25, somewhere in the young 20s. And he ran into his biological father and opened the door. He said, "You can come back into my life. Here's my number. Call me." He opened the door to have a relationship, to move on, and he never got a call until his father was dying. And that's when he reached out again. And at that point, Chris already had the closure that he needed. And so, his dad didn't get that option because of the years and years. Chris finally said with himself, I have the closure I need. I'm sorry you don't have the closure you need, but I can't give you what you're looking for.
And look, the lack of closure sometimes comes down to assumptions.
Yeah.
And I caution people, if you're assuming things about other people that you're needing closure from, don't. Instead of assuming, seek out truth, seek out what actually is, because sometimes our assumptions will fool our brains into thinking one thing, and so therefore we make a rash decision about what closure should be when the evidence shows something totally different. That's why I have trouble totally letting go of my dad's situation, because I know there's there's more there. And he's got to have a willingness, just like you said earlier, to want to have this as much as I do. And so I just hate so many assumptions get in the way of people finding that ultimate closure they're looking for.
Real Good Foods is one of the fastest growing frozen food companies in the U.S. Everything they make is nutrient dense, high in protein, low in carbs, and made from real food ingredients. They make food for every occasion: breakfast sandwiches, poppers, enchiladas, entrees, and pizza. So whether you're on a keto diet, trying to cut back on your carbs, or just trying to eat healthier, they make super convenient and tasty options. RealGoodFoods.com and @RealGoodFoods on social media.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I think a lot of our show here is telling our real life experiences so that it helps other people. And I just, I had a friendship that this person assumed a lot of things when I was in a really, really bad mind place. They assumed that I was angry with them. They assumed that I didn't like them. They assumed all of these things about me, which was never true. They assumed that I told Wildman that to be angry with them. And I'm like, I'm not that person. Like, I'm sorry if that's what came across, but yeah, you're really right. A lot of times when it comes to these relationship problems that happen, there's a lot of assumptions that go on, and maybe closure isn't even the answer. Maybe it's just truth. Maybe you both just need to get some truth out on the table. And so, ended up having to walk away from this friendship. And like I said, it's been really tough to know that I lost a friend through depression and through what was happening, through misunderstanding. But hey, at the end of the day, if this is what it is, this is what it is. And this has to be my closure, that, maybe one day things will be resolved. But for right now, I'm comfortable and confident in knowing that I made the right decision in my choice.
And not taking on that onus for why something didn't end well and why you now need closure is going to be such a take-home message today, guys. I hope you're getting this, that the onus of closure may not be on you. It could be somebody had a depression hit just suddenly, and it made them, go off the deep end and then suddenly cut you off. Like, that stuff happens. That's real. You're not always going to understand the why. And so don't always assume you had something to do with it. And yet our human nature, that's the first thing we do is we go, what did I do? What could I have done differently? How could I have prevented this from happening? And it's like, you're going to drive yourself nuts if you do that. So this is where creating within yourself, okay, learn more about maybe what happened. And even if you don't always get all the answers, you'll get enough nuggets. And plus, listen, you know yourself in your heart of hearts if you contributed to whatever happened in a relationship, a job, or whatever. You know the truth. And so your heart of hearts, that's what helps you create that closure, is if you know you did everything perfectly fine and yet this other person no longer wants to be in your life, that's on them. And you can create that closure for yourself that you did everything you were supposed to do.
Right. Wild Man comes to mind, y'all. I'll try not to be mean to him, but y'all have to understand, Brittany works off of tough love. And so sometimes I try to be very understanding and kind and calm to other people and just give the tough love to myself. But sometimes it just slips out. And so let's say I've had a really bad day, and Wild Man will come home. He's like, what did I do? And I'm like, stop making it about you. It's not about you. And I get a little upset because I'm like, quit. This is not about you. This has nothing to do with you. And sometimes I want to do that with other people and grab them by the face and go, this has nothing to do with you. I have a really good friend right now that I've been in it's so funny. I am helping her with this friendship that has a problem. So I'm helping her with another friendship. And I just keep telling her, sweetheart, walk away. Please walk away. It's not going to happen because this other person keeps bringing up 5 years ago. Keeps bringing up these things that happened 5 years ago. And my friend keeps saying, I was depressed. I was in an abusive relationship. I was not okay. Please stop bringing that time in my life up. I was not the same person that I am today. So like I have laid it out, either this other friend can choose to walk away, or she can choose to understand that my friend was going through a really hard time. It was not herself right then and had nothing to do with her. It had nothing to do with her. So yeah, it's really important in closure to realize maybe you don't need closure because it has nothing to do with you.
And listen, closure doesn't necessarily mean end. Closure could be comma. Closure could be, you know what? You went through a period of your life, like people, and you've been in my life the last few years. The last couple of years of my life have been a little bit tumultuous. And I'm just now coming on the other side of that. And I'm real excited about life and all the things now. But the last couple of years, if you kind of knew me in the transition from that childhood trauma and processing and all the things that happen and stuff in my personal life, like you would be like, holy crap, Jimmy. Like, and I had some people say, wow, you've changed. And I'm like, I hope for the better, and eventually did get better. But there were moments that people saw things that they went,
yeah.
And so like they could judge me and want closure with me because they saw that moment. But then now they see me now and they kind of go, oh, okay, well, let me close that image of you. Let me put a comma. And now let's recontinue the relationship. So closure doesn't mean an end always.
Oh, yes, for sure. Like, I think about some relationships too that have had that comma moment that, I think me and my dad didn't talk for 6 months. Okay. Like, and we're good now, guys. Like, we're good. And I almost wish that he would listen to some of these episodes and listen to me talk about this time. We had a comma moment where it was, all right, you got your thing. I got my thing. Let's talk about this thing together and decide if this is a period or if this is a comma moment. Which one is it? Is this a period and an end to an end, or is this a comma moment?
It was not going to be a period. It was going to be triple exclamation point, question mark, and like FU signs at the end if it went one way.
Oh my gosh. But at the end of it, oh God. I hate even saying it out loud. It feels so gross, but like we're the same person. we're the same person and we react to situations in the same way. And so he was hurt, which made him react in anger. I was hurt, which made me shut down and be angry on the inside. And so we just shut down and didn't talk to each other because we were angry. We were hurt.
And you both were waiting on the other to come talk first.
Because, we was like, we were like,
I'm not going to give him that privilege. I'm not going to give him that privilege. He's going to have to come to me. Oh, no, she's not going to get that privilege. She's going to have to come to me. And it's like nobody talked to anybody. And it turned out it was another family member had an event that you guys ended up together. And it's like, and then you had to kind of create that comma moment.
Okay, it's all right. It's all right. I'm not bitter about it at all. It's just, it's comical. I view it as comical. And we had that comma moment that we were talking about.
Yes, it's comical. Comma, cool. Sorry. But
sometimes you can just come up with some things on the fly. That is hilarious. I do the same thing, but not quite as often. I'm not quite as refined in that area of what you do there. I don't even know what you call it. Just that thing that you do.
Quick-witted, I guess. Yeah.
That'll work. Yeah. Creative, whatever. One of those words. All the above. But yeah, mine and my dad's story is really funny in the pain that both of us have experienced through the years, both in this reactionary. He would do something and I would react, and then he would be upset with my reaction. It just, yeah. We needed some more maturity within that relationship, and it did end up coming. And again, I go back to that boundary point. And so within your relationships right now, whatever it is that you're facing, ask yourself the hard questions. This is something I say almost every week. Ask yourself the hard questions. When you're looking at a relationship, the number one question to ask yourself, if you're like coming to this point, is when was the last time I was genuinely happy? When was the last time I was genuinely happy? And if you cannot remember the date, it's time to move on. And it's time, I think we kind of talked about this on the last episode with the move forward. Help me. What?
Move on, push forward.
Thank you. That one. Of asking yourself that question, when was the last time I was genuinely happy? And if you can't come up with an answer, then yeah, it's time for closure of your choosing and your choice, and go on.
And let's remind people too, closure doesn't mean resolved. Like, I think we want things to have a resolution and a nice little bow at the end. And this is not a Disney movie. Like, everything doesn't end beautifully at the end and everybody lives happily ever after. Closure just means, okay, you decided to put that punctuation at the end of the sentence. That's literally all it is.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. That is probably the best analogy to this closure thing, is what's the give it a punctuation. Don't have an ellipses here. No dot.
Even if it's a question mark.
Yeah, like exactly. Question mark, put it away. That's your closure for now. Comma, that's your closure. Period, that's your closure. Search for the punctuation. Like, I really, really, I gotta write that one down. I really like that one.
Yeah, and look, comma continues the story. So you don't even have closure with comma, maybe closure on all the things that happened before the comma, but then you get to go on. So comma is a cool one because it's like you close out parts that you needed that, and so you can move on, and that's where you are with your dad now. But the exclamation point with question marks and all things at the end, that's kind of where I'm at with my dad right now. It's like exclamation, 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 question mark, question mark, question mark.
Right.
Dot.
No dot. But
yeah, but the dot, like, look, the propensity to have the dot is there because we're still human. Even though I have closure, I've come to the conclusion, probably not going to have a relationship.
Yeah.
I still want that, and I would desire that. But look, I think his disinterest has made the choice easy. If he called me, I would probably take his call, at least hear what he has to say.
Yeah.
And if there was contrition there, and oh wow, I didn't realize how much I needed you in my life. Of course, he's a little bit mentally gone. I think about this too, like the people that start getting dementia and Alzheimer's, and yet still physically, bodily here, but you can't talk to them because they're not mentally here anymore. And so you're desiring closure with this blob of a human with no mental faculties about them.
Yeah.
You can't get closure in the way that you want. And so that's where you have to manufacture it yourself and say, okay, well, I'm no longer going to be able to have that conversation. So therefore, and I think that's what's happened with my dad. He's out of mind. He can't really think anymore. So even coming up with a rational, mature conversation, it's not even in his possibility anymore.
Right. And that's that's a truth. That's a hard truth, and the truth is hard, and it hurts. I mean, it really hurts sometimes to accept it as it is, but it is the truth, and that in itself is the closure.
But what gives me closure is knowing that what he did to me did not break me. And here I am now doing a mindset podcast with my best friend and using these experiences with the trauma he put me through to find this is my closure from that. Because I'm like, okay, we're going to use it for good. We're going to let people hear our stories of pain. And through that, people are going to be helped. And it's like that creates a little more closure, puts another period after the sentence that maybe I didn't have before. So that's what I hold on to.
I think that's the secret to what I've done throughout the years. I get asked a lot of times, like, Brittany, how are you where you are? Like, how are you not dead? And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know. And then I remind myself, oh yeah, because even if I fall, even if I fall down, even if I get depressed, even if I fall apart a little bit, and I don't shame myself for doing those things, I'm still a human being. At some point in every single hard story that I've ever had that I could tell, it would take me forever to tell my whole story. But every single time I get to a point where I look in the mirror and I go, what are you going to do now? It's time to comma or period or exclamation point that chapter of my life. I like periods. I like to end things in that chapter of my life and move the hell on. And 75 Hard has given me such closure to the last 10 months of my life that have been absolute hell, one thing after another, after another, after another. And my mindset just spiraled down and down and down until I got to a point where I'm like, nope, we are closing this chapter. We are flipping a new page. We are opening it again, and we are going forward.
Sorry, you opened the door to this joke, but you have a lot of periods is what I hear. So, and on that note, we're going to closure this podcast before it gets any more goofy. Episode 37, you guys. So when life doesn't allow you to have closure, sometimes you just gotta figure that out on your own. And it's okay to manufacture your own. It's okay to not take ownership and put the onus on yourself of responsibility of trying to figure out what happened in situations. Closure just needs to happen from within and stop letting other people try to influence you in that way.
Yep. Episode 37, guys. Thank you guys for always being here. Review us somewhere. Find us somewhere and give us a review. We love hearing from you guys. Also, you can message us on Instagram, Jimmy's Living Low Carb Man. I'm becoming Brittany Lee, and let us hear from you there as well. We love hearing from you guys. You can find the episodes for the first time when we air these on YouTube at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the first place you can find them in video format. And also on Sundays, thank you, at 4 p.m. You put up all the video formats on Sunday, right? On like Instagram and Facebook. Yep. Up there. So Instagram is One Step Deeper Podcast, and then we have the One Step Deeper Podcast Facebook community over on Facebook. And then Mondays, that's where you can get your regular podcast every single Monday. I'm struggling today. And that's like Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, and ALEXA. Oh man, help me out here. I'm struggling today.
And the official website is?
Yes, onestepdeeperpodcast.com. That was the last one. Man, ooh, I needed to just go ahead and close all this out.
The partridge in a pear tree. Speaking of closure, very well done, even though you get nervous.
I do. I talk the whole damn time, and I'm closing the show, and I'm like freezing up.
You know what it is? You speak extemporaneously during the show. This is like formality, and your brain doesn't do well with formality per se. So you usually leave formality to Jimmy, and so. But you did okay. You've had a rough few days here with the breaking in the car, and your little one was sick yesterday, so you had to adjust some of your plans, and you woke up late today, and you got started on your 75 hard day, like 38, like late, and so you were like, ah. So, but you did well today. This was a good little crowning achievement and bringing closure to that chaos in your life today.
Today was great. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you as always.
And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you again next week.
OneStepDeeperPodcast.com